He pressed his hand against the wall, heart pounding so hard he could feel the tremor echo in his fingertips. The plaster shivered faintly, almost hollow. Something was wrong. He had lived in this apartment for months, convinced he knew its every creak, every draft, every dark corner. Yet tonight, as he traced the wall with slow precision, he realized the truth. This was no ordinary wall. It was false. The discovery did not bring relief. It brought dread. For weeks, small things had unsettled him. A faint smell of stale bread in the hall, though he hadn't cooked. The gentle scrape of movement when the building was quietest. Shadows that didn't belong to him. Now, with his palm pressed flat against the hollow surface, everything he feared collapsed into a single, undeniable fact. Someone else had been here. He pushed harder. The wall shifted. A breath of air escaped from the crack, thick, musty, and damp, like air that hadn't seen daylight in years. His stomach twisted. He pressed again, and the panel gave way, swinging inward to reveal a darkness far deeper than he expected. Inside lay a secret that would change everything. Ethan Cole was not an ordinary tenant. His neighbors barely knew him, but those who had spoken to him noticed his quiet manners and steady gaze. He was 32, broad-shouldered but weary-looking, the kind of man who carried stories in his eyes but never told them. Before this apartment, there had been another life. Years earlier, Ethan wore the uniform of a soldier. He had marched across scorching deserts, listened to the crack of distant gunfire, and learned to sleep through the scream of helicopters overhead. War had stripped him of comfort, but it had also taught him endurance. He had buried comrades, men who never came home and carried their memory like invisible medals. The world had moved on, but Ethan still carried the war inside him. When he returned, the city felt like another battlefield, only quieter, lonelier. The apartment he rented promised peace, or at least routine. It was small, with paint peeling at the edges and pipes that moaned at night. But it was his, a place where silence meant safety, or so he thought. At first, he dismissed the strangeness. A missing apple from the counter, a folded blanket slightly disturbed, the faintest sound of movement when he was half asleep. The mind plays tricks, he told himself. Old instincts from war, hearing threats where there were none. But the unease never left. In quiet moments, he would pause and listen, certain someone else was breathing under the same roof. Then came the smell. Damp, old food. Not his, not fresh, lingering like a secret no one wanted discovered. And now here it was, the hollow wall. Ethan stepped inside. The space was narrow, like a passage carved in secrecy. His boots crunched on something soft. When he lifted his flashlight, his breath caught. Mattresses lay on the floor, worn thin, covered in stains and dust. Beside them sat empty food cans stacked neatly in corners, as if someone had been rationing their life away. Torn blankets were folded with care, and a battered backpack leaned against the wall, half open. This wasn't a forgotten storage space. This was lived in. Recently, the smell of stale sweat and mold made him gag. He saw scribbles on the wall, etched into plaster with something sharp. Names, dates, fragments of sentences that made no sense. His skin prickled with the weight of someone else's presence. The war had taught him to read silence. He knew without doubt that whoever lived here had not been gone long. Ethan stumbled back into his apartment, pulse racing. His lease had never mentioned hidden rooms. His landlord had never hinted at such things. He paid every month, trusting that this was his safe refuge. But safety had been an illusion. What cut deeper was the silence of others. His neighbors, the ones who looked away in the hall, must have known something. They had heard sounds, smelled the decay, maybe even seen movements. Yet no one had spoken. Everyone had chosen silence over truth. It was betrayal dressed as apathy. Ethan had risked his life for strangers overseas, believing in the value of protecting others. Yet here, at home, no one had lifted a finger to protect him from the secret under his own roof. He didn't call the police. He didn't storm into the landlord's office with fury. Instead, Ethan did what he had always done. He stayed quiet, observant, calculating. That night, He sat in the dark, back straight, waiting. Hours passed. The building settled, pipes clinked, and then, faintly, from the hollow passage, he heard it. Movement. Soft, dragging, cautious movement. Someone was still there, but Ethan did not move. He let the silence stretch. He knew the power of waiting, of patience honed in deserts where one wrong step meant disaster. His strength was not in words, but in quiet endurance. The next morning, Ethan stood in the landlord's office. Mr. Daly, a balding man with nervous eyes, shuffled papers without meeting Ethan's gaze. "There's a room behind my wall," Ethan said. His voice was calm, but heavy, like stone sinking in water. Daly froze. His fingers tightened on the papers. Then slowly he sighed. "You weren't supposed to know." The words landed like a strike. Ethan said nothing. Silence pressed the air, forcing Daly to keep talking. "It's complicated," the landlord muttered. "Old building, some rooms were sealed off. People, well, sometimes they find ways back in. It's better if tenants don't know. No one gets hurt that way." No one gets hurt. The phrase rang hollow. Someone had been living in his walls, inches from his bed, and Daly had chosen secrecy over safety. Ethan didn't threaten. He didn't shout. He simply looked at Daly, eyes steady, unflinching. The same way he once faced commanders who gambled with lives. Silence carried more weight than anger, and in that silence, Daly broke. He fidgeted, stammered, tried to explain, but the truth was laid bare. He had hidden it. He had betrayed his tenants. Ethan left without a word. He didn't need Daly's excuses. He had carried too many burdens to waste breath on lies. News traveled faster than Ethan expected. Neighbors whispered in hallways, eyes widening with shame. Some admitted they had heard things but stayed quiet out of fear. One elderly woman touched Ethan's arm and whispered, "I'm sorry. We should have said something." For the first time, silence shifted in his favor. What was once complicity became solidarity. People began to demand answers from Daly. The landlord, once smug, now faced a crowd of tenants united not by anger, but by the quiet weight of shared truth. As Ethan packed his few belongings, he looked once more at the wall and thought, "Some battles are fought with weapons. Others are fought with silence. Both can leave scars." Later, when asked why he didn't confront the landlord more directly, he simply said, "Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the only way to let the truth speak louder than lies." These words spread through the building, repeated in hushed tones, posted on notes slipped under doors. His silence had become its own kind of resistance. The landlord eventually caved. The false walls were torn down, the hidden rooms exposed to light for the first time in years. What had once been secret and unsettling was laid bare before everyone. Tenants stood together watching as the dark spaces emptied. Some wept, realizing they had lived beside shadows they ignored. Others simply stood in solemn silence, a quiet act of respect for whatever lives had passed unseen behind those walls. Daly tried to explain, but no one listened. Silence drowned him out, louder than any protest could have been. And Ethan, standing slightly apart, felt the weight lift from his chest. For once, silence had not been isolation, it had been power. Ethan left the apartment soon after. He found another place, smaller but honest, with no hidden walls and no lingering secrets. Yet the memory of that false wall followed him, not as fear, but as a lesson. Some secrets do not hide in faraway deserts or distant wars. They hide closer, behind walls, inside silences, within the choices people make to look away. And sometimes, the quietest resistance can be the loudest demand for truth. As he locked the door for the last time, Ethan whispered words that would linger far longer than the walls themselves. "Some secrets hide closer than you think." And that is Ethan's story, a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits in silence, letting truth reveal itself in time. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Have you ever felt a secret pressing just beyond the walls of your own life? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Stories of hidden battles, silent heroes, and truths too close to ignore. Because sometimes, the scariest secrets are the ones right next to us.